I stood on that landing, holding an expensive bouquet, feeling like the biggest fool in Chicago. My own mother had just slammed the door in my face on Mother's Day. But 4 months later, when they crashed my housewarming party and saw my $4 million home, everything changed. What I told them next left them speechless. Let me take you back to where this all started. My name is Patricia, and I'm 32 years old. One phone call from my Aunt Linda changed everything I thought I knew about family, forgiveness, and second chances. Patricia, sweetheart. Aunt Linda's voice trembled through the phone. I need to talk to you about something important. I had a terrible dream about your parents last night. Isayad. Already knowing where this was going, Aunt Linda was the only relative I'd spoken to in years. She knew exactly why I'd cut ties with my parents, my brother Marcus, and my sister Katie 10 years ago. I know you haven't spoken to them in years. But honey, maybe it's time to try and make amends. You're still family. After all, Aunt Linda, I really don't think that's a good idea, I said softly, staring out my apartment window at the Chicago skyline. Just think about it. Sweetheart, Mother's Day is coming up next Sunday. Maybe this could be the right time to reach out for closure. If nothing else, I had no desire to reopen those wounds. But Aunt Linda had always treated me with genuine kindness and respect. If reaching out would give her peace of mind, maybe I could try one more time. But to understand why this mattered so much, I need to take you back 10 years to the day my family disowned me. I was 22, fresh out of Northwestern University with a finance degree. I just landed my dream job as a financial analyst at a prestigious investment firm in downtown Chicago. Life was starting to take shape. I was renting a small apartment in Lincoln Park, working 16-hour days, surviving on coffee and ambition. Then my grandmother died. She was my father's mother, and honestly, the only person in my family who'd ever shown me unconditional love. While everyone else seemed to merely tolerate me, Grandma always made me feel special. Valued. Scene. When the lawyer read her will, we learned she'd left her house and property to her 3 sons, my father Robert and his 2 brothers. They sold everything within a month and split the money. But here's where it gets interesting. Grandma had also left $50,000 to each of her 5 grandchildren, my brother Marcus, my sister Katie, me, and my 2 cousins James and Rebecca. Everything divided equally and fairly among all of us. I remember thinking how generous and thoughtful she was, making sure we all got the same amount. No favorites, no drama, just pure love distributed equally. I was so naive. 3 days after the will reading, my mother called. Patricia, come over for dinner tonight. Let's get the whole family together. Something in her tone should have warned me, but I was 22 and still believed family meant safety. When I arrived at my parents' 3rd-floor walk-up apartment in Oak Park, Marcus and Katie were already sitting at the kitchen table. Their faces were hard as stone. Not a smile, not a greeting, just cold stares. Sit down. Patricia, my mother said, sliding a cup of tea across the table to me. We need to discuss something important. I sat down slowly, my stomach already tightening with anxiety. Your sister is getting married in 4 months. She continued. Oh, that's wonderful news. I turned to Katie with genuine happiness. Congratulations, I'm so happy for you. My sister didn't smile. She just stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. But there's a problem, my mother said. Weddings are very expensive these days. Then she said the words that would change my entire life. We think you should give your sister your share of the inheritance to pay for her wedding. The kitchen went completely silent. I could hear the refrigerator humming, a car horn outside, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I'm sorry. What Katie needs a beautiful wedding, my mother continued, as if she were asking me to pass the salt. $50,000 will just about cover the basics: the venue at the country club, the designer dress, the photographer, the flowers, the caterer, everything a bride needs. But that's my money. My voice came out smaller than I intended. Grandma left it to me. Don't be selfish. Patricia. My father's voice cut through the room like a knife. In this family, we help each other. That's how families work. But Marcus got $50,000 too. I protested, looking at my brother, and James and Rebecca. Why should I be the only one who has to give up my inheritance? Because Katie needs it right now. My mother snapped, her face flushing red. She's getting married. You're just working. What do you need $50,000 for anyway? I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. My hands were shaking. No, I'm not giving away my money. That inheritance is from Grandma, and she wanted me to have it. I'm going to invest it in my future. Katie's face turned crimson with rage. You're so greedy and selfish. If you don't give me that money, then you're not invited to my wedding. How do you like that? That's fine, I said quietly, shocked by how quickly this had escalated. But don't blackmail me. Katesy. That's when my father exploded. He shot up from his chair so fast it toppled backward and crashed to the floor. He pointed at the door, his fingers shaking with fury. Get out of my house. Get out right now. You selfish, ungrateful girl. I don't want to see your face here ever again. I stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Are you serious right now? Absolutely serious, my mother said coldly, crossing her arms. Don't come back here until you come to your senses and do the right thing for your sister. I looked at Marcus, hoping for support, for someone to say this was crazy. He just looked away. I grabbed my purse and walked out. As I closed the door behind me, I heard my mother say, she'll come crawling back in a few days. But I didn't, and they weren't bluffing. After that terrible night, not a single person from my family called me. Not once. Not for birthdays. Not for holidays. Not to check if I was alive or dead. I waited for weeks, thinking surely someone would calm down and apologize. Surely my father didn't really mean I wasn't his daughter anymore. Surely this was just a terrible fight that would blow over. But my phone stayed silent. I tried reaching out. I sent birthday texts. Happy birthday. Mom, I love you. Happy birthday. Dad, hope you're well. Happy birthday. Marcus, happy birthday. Katesy. Every single message went unanswered. Not even a thank you. Just emptiness. After 6 months of being completely ignored, I finally stopped trying, and I made a decision that would change my life forever. I took Grandma's $50,000, and instead of letting it sit in a savings account, I did something bold. I invested it in a healthcare technology startup that had just launched a telemedicine platform with innovative diagnostic features. I spent weeks researching, reading their business plan, meeting with the founders, asking tough questions. I believed in their vision. 5 years later, that startup went public on the NASDAQ. My $50,000 had turned into $750,000. I stared at my brokerage account, unable to believe what I was seeing. This was real money, life-changing money, and it was all mine. But I didn't stop there. I took a portion of those profits and invested in an American AI company focused on natural language processing and machine learning. I kept working at the investment firm, getting promoted twice, building my expertise. But I was also carefully, strategically growing my personal portfolio. I invested in municipal bonds for stability, real estate investment trusts for passive income. I diversified. I researched. I stayed disciplined. 5 years after that first big win, my total assets reached $3.5 million. $3.5 million. And my family, they had no idea. They didn't know where I lived, where I worked, whether I was struggling or thriving. They'd completely erased me from their lives. Which brings me back to that phone call from Aunt Linda and Mother's Day. I bought the most beautiful bouquet I could find at an upscale Chicago florist, pink roses and white lilies. My mother's favorites. I spent over $200 on those flowers. As I drove to Oak Park, to that same apartment building where I'd grown up. My heart pounded with nervous hope. Maybe 10 years was enough time. Maybe they'd grown, changed, realized how badly they'd treated me. I climbed the familiar stairs to the third floor. The same chipped paint, the same worn carpet, the same smell of cooking that always filled the hallways. I knocked on the door. My mother opened it. For a split second, I saw surprise flash across her face. Then confusion. Then her expression hardened into something cold and distant. "What are you doing here, Hi?" "Mom." I held out the expensive bouquet, forcing a smile. "Happy Mother's Day. I just wanted to talk. Maybe we could work things out after all this time." She didn't take the flowers. She just stared at them like they were contaminated. Behind her, I could see my father, Marcus, and Katie with her husband. My sister was holding two small children, my niece and nephew, whom I'd never met. I didn't even know their names. "Can I come in?" I asked softly. "Just for a few minutes, please." My mother blocked the doorway with her arm. "You don't belong here anymore. Do you understand me? Now go away." And she slammed the door in my face. The sound echoed through the hallway. I stood there for a full minute, holding that $200 bouquet, feeling like the stupidest person in Chicago. I'd actually believed they might have changed. That maybe, after a decade, they'd show some basic human decency. I was wrong. I drove home through blurry tears and called Aunt Linda. "Oh, Patricia, sweetheart," she said after I told her what happened. "I'm so sorry. If they're going to treat you like that, maybe it's time to stop trying altogether. You deserve so much better." "You're right. I'm done. Aunt Linda, I'm done hoping they'll change." But something shifted in me after that rejection. Instead of feeling defeated, I felt liberated. I had almost $4 million in my investment accounts, and I was still renting. It was time to build something permanent, something that was entirely mine. The next morning, I called a real estate agent. "I want a house in the North Shore suburbs, at least 3 bedrooms, half an acre minimum, and it must have a pool. My budget is up to $4.5 million. We spent 3 weeks looking at properties in Wilmette, Winnetka, and Lake Forest. Some were too traditional, some too small, some just didn't feel right. Then I walked into a stunning modern home in a gated Lake Forest community, and I knew immediately. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a pristine half-acre lot, an open-concept kitchen with a massive marble island, a master suite with a walk-in closet bigger than my first apartment, 2 gorgeous guest bedrooms, and outside, a heated infinity pool that looked like something from a luxury resort. The asking price was $4,200,000. I offered $4 million. Cash. Nah. Mortgage. No contingencies. The seller accepted within 2 hours. 3 weeks later, I held the keys to my dream home. Moving day was chaos and joy all mixed together. I'd been collecting furniture and art for years, just waiting for the right space. Désigné chairs, unique lighting fixtures, contemporary paintings, everything finally had a home. I called Aunt Linda, bursting with excitement. "I did it. I bought a house. Patricia, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. Sweetheart, I'm throwing a housewarming party next month. Will you come?" "Absolutely. Can I invite some of the extended family? They'd love to see what you've accomplished." "Of course, invite anyone you want." I paused. "Just please, Aunt Linda, don't tell my parents. Marcus. Or Casey. I don't want them there." "I understand completely. Honey, they don't deserve to celebrate your success." I scheduled the party for a Saturday in March, exactly 4 months after that painful Mother's Day rejection. The day of the party was perfect. 70 degrees. Sunny. Not a cloud in the sky. My house filled with people I genuinely cared about, colleagues from work, friends from Northwestern, Aunt Linda, and various extended family members I'd reconnected with over the years. My cousins James and Rebecca arrived and stood in the foyer with their mouths hanging open. Patricia, this is incredible. James breathed. Looking around at the soaring ceilings and modern design, I had no idea you were doing this well. I honestly thought you were just barely getting by. I smiled. I worked hard and made smart investments. Grandma's $50,000 was the seed that started everything. Rebecca pulled me aside into the kitchen, away from other guests. Can I ask you something, of course? She hesitated, then said quietly, your parents have been telling everyone for years that you have serious problems with alcohol and gambling. They said that's why the family doesn't talk to you. I nearly dropped my champagne glass. They said what? Yeah. At every family gathering. They say, poor Patricia became an alcoholic and gambles away everything on sports betting and online casinos. It's so tragic. We tried to help, but she pushed us away. They've been saying this for years. Patricia. My hands started shaking. That's not true. Not even remotely true. I've never had a drinking problem. And I've never gambled a single dollar in my life. I figured. Rebecca said gently. Looking at you now, at this house, at how put together and successful you are, their story never made sense. My parents had spent 10 years destroying my reputation with the entire extended family. They'd made me out to be a degenerate loser to justify cutting me off, to paint themselves as victims of a troubled daughter instead of the cruel people who disowned their child over money. So what really happened? Rebecca asked. I took a deep breath and told her everything: the inheritance, the demand that I give it to Katie, the disownment. Oh my God, she whispered. That's horrible. Let's not ruin the party with old drama, I said, straightening my shoulders. Come on, let's go enjoy ourselves. The party was in full swing around 4 o'clock. People were laughing by the pool. The caterers were serving amazing food. Music played softly in the background. I felt genuinely happy, surrounded by people who loved me for who I was. Then came the pounding on my front door. Violent, aggressive pounding that made several guests jump. I opened the door, and my stomach dropped. My entire family stood there: my mother, father, Marcus, and Katie, their faces twisted with rage. What kind of show is this? My mother shouted, pushing past me into my foyer. Why weren't we invited? We're your family. Because when I showed up on Mother's Day with flowers, you slammed the door in my face, I said calmly, though my heart was racing. Remember, my father looked around my house, his eyes wide with shock and greed. Definitely greed. Where the hell did you get money for a place like this? He demanded. This must have cost millions. That's none of your business. My mother's face flushed crimson. You've been lying to us for years. You pretended to be poor, but you had money this whole time. Only rich people can afford mansions like this. The entire party had gone silent. Every single guest was watching this scene unfold. The size of my bank account is none of your concern, I said firmly. Now leave. Immediately. But my mother wasn't done. She spotted James and Rebecca and marched toward them. You two need to talk sense into her, she yelled. Patricia abandoned her family for no reason. She's the most selfish person alive. Tell her she needs to help us. I'm going to say this one last time, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Get out of my house right now, or I'm calling 911. My father started to argue, but Marcus grabbed his arm. They finally left. My mother still shouting about how I thought I was too good for them now. I closed the door, took a deep breath, and turned to my guests with a bright smile. I'm so sorry about that little drama. Everyone. Family. Right? Let's keep celebrating. Most people laughed nervously. The party gradually resumed, though I could see questions in many eyes. Later that night, sitting alone in my living room after everyone left, the truth hit me hard. For 10 years, my parents told everyone I was an alcoholic gambler to justify our estrangement. But the moment they saw I had money, they wanted back in my life immediately. This was never about love, never about family. It was always about money. The next morning, my phone exploded. Dozens of missed calls, voicemails, text messages flooding in. From my mother. We know you're rich now. You need to share with your family. That's what family does. We raised you. From Katie, I have a huge mortgage and can barely make payments. You have to help me. I'm your sister and I'm struggling. From Marcus, my car is falling apart and my wife is pregnant. I need money for a new vehicle. You're doing so well. You should help your family. I read every message with growing disgust. 10 years of silence. 10 years of lies about me being an alcoholic and a gambler. And now, suddenly, they wanted to be family again. I blocked every single number without responding. A week later, Aunt Linda called. Patricia, your parents are calling me constantly, trying to get your new phone number. They've called me 20 times this week. What did you tell them? That they had their chance on Mother's Day and they blew it. Sweetie, they only want you now because of your money. They don't actually want a relationship with you. I know. Aunt Linda, thank you for having my back. Always. Honey, you deserve so much better. But blocking their numbers wasn't enough to stop them. 2 weeks later, I was driving home from work around 7 p.m. As I approached my gated community, I spotted a familiar old Honda Civic parked across the street. My parents were sitting inside, watching the entrance. When I pulled up to enter my security code, they jumped out and ran toward my car. Patricia, we need to talk, my father shouted. I rolled down my window slightly. No, we don't. I blocked your numbers for a reason. Come on. Honey, my mother said in a fake sweet voice that made my skin crawl. We're family. Let's work this out like civilized people. We stopped being family 10 years ago when you kicked me out for not giving Katie my inheritance. I said coldly. That was so long ago. My father said, attempting to smile. Everyone got emotional. Water under the bridge. Right. Let's move forward. No. You said exactly what you meant. The only reason you're here now is because you found out about my money. My mother's fake smile vanished instantly. So what if that's true? You're supposed to help your family when you're successful. Where was family when I was 22 and starting my career? I shot back. Where was family on Mother's Day when I brought you flowers? They had no answer. Get off this property right now, or I'm calling the police. This security gate has cameras recording everything. They left, but their car sat at the end of the street for another hour before finally driving away. A week later, they ambushed me at work. I was walking to my car in the parking garage when all four of them suddenly appeared from behind a concrete pillar. Patricia, wait, please, Marcus called out. I spun around, startled and angry. Are you people insane? This is harassment. How did you even find out where I work? We just want 5 minutes. Katie pleaded, eyes wide with fake innocence. Just 5 minutes to talk. You had 10 years to talk, I said, my voice echoing in the concrete garage. You chose silence and lies. Now it's my turn to stay silent. We made a mistake. My mother forced out like the words physically hurt her. We're sorry. What exactly are you sorry for? I demanded. For disowning me. For 10 years of ignoring me. For telling everyone I'm an alcoholic gambler. Or are you just sorry you didn't know about my money sooner? Everyone stared at the floor. We heard about your investment success. My father tried. That's impressive. You've done well. Without any help from you. Without any support whatsoever. But we're still family. Marcus said. Families forgive each other. That's what families do. Families also support each other. I countered. They don't make up vicious lies. They don't kick their own children out over money. You're strangers to me now. Please. Patricia. Katie whimpered. Tears forming. I really am struggling with my mortgage. If you could just help a little. Let me be crystal clear. You didn't invite me to your wedding because I wouldn't give you money. You ignored me for 10 years. You destroyed my reputation with lies. And now you want me to pay your mortgage. Do you hear how insane that sounds? I was young and stupid. Katie tried. You're exactly the same. You just need money now. I got in my car and locked the doors. If you contact me again, I'm filing a restraining order. I'm documenting everything. I drove away and never looked back. They never showed up again after that. The harassment left a bitter taste, but it also freed me. My life flourished. My portfolio grew. I started dating Alex, a wonderful software developer I met through friends. When I told him about my family, he was completely supportive. "You don't owe them anything," he said firmly. "DNA doesn't give people the right to abuse you and then demand money. Sometimes I feel guilty," I admitted. "Patricia, they kicked you out over money, ignored you for 10 years, lied about you being an addict, and only came back when they found out you're rich. You're not being cruel. You're protecting yourself from toxic people. That's healthy." He was right. I started hosting regular gatherings at my house. Aunt Linda came often, bringing relatives I'd reconnected with. We'd barbecue by the pool, gather around the dining table, laugh and share stories. Real family moments built on genuine care. At one dinner, James asked the question everyone was thinking: "What really happened between you and your parents?" Because the addiction story is obviously false. I told them everything. The inheritance, the demand, the disownment, the decade of lies. "That's insane." Rebecca breathed. "Over $50,000. They wanted money more than they wanted me," I said simply. "And now they only want back in because I'm successful. They don't want a daughter. They want a bank. You're better off without them." James said, "I know. I really am." 2 years passed without harassment. My portfolio surpassed $5 million. I got promoted to senior vice president. Alex and I moved in together and started planning our future. At my 35th birthday party, Rebecca pulled me aside with a strange expression. "Patricia, Marcus just texted me asking for photos of your party. He says your parents want to see how you're doing." I actually laughed. "Tell him if they want to know how I'm doing, they should ask me themselves like adults." Perfect answer. She grinned. That night, Alex asked me, "Important question. Do you ever regret cutting them off?" I thought carefully. No. My life is so much better without their toxicity. I have real relationships now with people who genuinely care about me. But they're still your family. Blood doesn't make family, I said firmly. Love, support, and respect make family. The people here tonight: Aunt Linda, James, Rebecca, you. My friends, they're my real family. They celebrate my success without jealousy, support me without conditions, and love me for who I am, not what I can give them. Several months later, Aunt Linda called with concerning news. "Patricia, your father had a heart attack. He's at Northwestern Memorial. He's stable, but I thought you should know." My heart sank despite everything. "Is he okay?" The doctors say yes. It wasn't too serious. "Will you visit him?" she asked carefully. He hesitated, torn between duty and self-preservation. "No. If they wanted me in their lives, they've had 10 years to reach out. And not just for money." "I understand, sweetheart." 2 days later, my mother called from an unknown number. "Your father's in the hospital. You're not coming. He's your father. He stopped being my father when he said I wasn't his daughter anymore." I said quietly. "Those were his exact words. He's asking about you." "I doubt that. If he wanted to see me, he's had a decade to pick up the phone. We were wrong. But we're family. You'll regret not coming. You made your choice 10 years ago. I'm living with my consequences, and you can live with yours." I hung up. Alex found me staring at my phone. "What are you feeling?" he asked gently. "Part of me says I should go. Another part knows they only call when they need something. Trust your instincts. You're protecting yourself. That's not wrong." My father recovered within a week. I didn't visit, and I didn't feel guilty. I realized that even with family, relationships require mutual effort. You can't ignore someone for a decade, spread lies, and then expect them to come running when it's convenient for you. 6 months later, I threw a huge birthday party. The weather was perfect. My house was filled with laughter and love. Rebecca showed me a text from Marcus. Take photos of Patricia's party. Mom and Dad want to see how she's doing. Even now they're spying instead of just calling me like normal people. I said, shaking my head. What should I say? Tell them if they want to know how I'm doing. They should ask me themselves. That night, Alex and I sat by the pool under the stars. Do you ever regret it? He asked. I thought about it seriously. No. My life is infinitely better without their drama. I have real relationships now with people who genuinely care. They're still your blood family, though. Blood doesn't make family. I said, love, support, and respect make family. The people who were here tonight, they're my real family. 3 years have passed since that dramatic housewarming. My parents occasionally try to reach me through relatives, but they've never sincerely apologized or shown genuine interest in me as a person, only in what I can give them. I'm done feeling guilty about protecting myself even from family. Last month, Alex and I got engaged. We're planning an intimate wedding next spring with only people who truly matter. Aunt Linda cried happy tears. James and Rebecca are in the wedding party. My colleagues threw me a surprise engagement party. My career thrives. I'm now senior vice president with a 7-figure portfolio. I mentor young women in finance, helping them build success. My home is filled with love, laughter, and genuine relationships. We host monthly gatherings, and every time I walk through my door, I feel grateful. I've finally found real peace. If I could go back to that kitchen table 10 years ago, I'd tell myself, stand your ground. Refusing their demands will be the hardest thing you've ever done. You'll cry. Doubt yourself. Wonder if you're selfish. But you're not. You're setting boundaries and respecting yourself. 10 years from now, you'll own a beautiful home bought with your own money, surrounded by people who love you for who you are, not what you can give them. The family that chooses money over you doesn't deserve a place in your future. Let them go. Build your own family based on respect, love, and support. You'll be more than fine. You'll be happy. Being disowned was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to become independent, to rely on myself, to build something from nothing. My biological family wanted $50,000 more than they wanted me. I took that $50,000 and turned it into millions. But more importantly, I turned that rejection into freedom. Freedom to build the life I wanted, with people I chose, on my own terms. That's the real success story. If you're going through something similar, remember this: you don't owe anyone access to your life, success, or peace, not even family. Protect your boundaries, invest in yourself, and surround yourself with people who genuinely care. Your future self will thank you. Story 2. My wife sent her sister an SMS. At last, I'm self-sufficient enough to go. I was 3 steps ahead, and she didn't realize it. Accounts are divided, divorce papers are completed, and apartment keys are prepared. I went away with everything in its proper position, leaving her fumbling. Read it. Hello. My wife believed me to be a dull, unambitious IT man. She didn't see what was coming. So I said okay, made my own plan, and remained silent. Let me begin from the beginning before we get to it. Mercer, Caleb, is my name. I'm 34, live in a 2-story home on the outskirts of a medium-sized city, and work in cybersecurity. Not wealthy, but not in financial hardship. I manage compliance and data security for businesses that want to stay out of the news and out of legal trouble. The majority of my customers are tiny banks, insurance companies, and hospitals, places where a single error might instantly destroy hundreds of lives. Lena is my wife's name. She is 32 years old and works for a local health insurance firm in marketing. Lena is the kind of person who can converse with everyone, keeps birthdays in mind, always chooses the ideal present, yoga, book groups, and self-improvement podcasts. She lives in that world. She enjoys networking gatherings and pubs with fairy lights hung over the roof. At a friend's birthday celebration 7 years ago, we first met. I was working nonstop on my cybersecurity degree while I was in graduate school, working as a marketing assistant right out of college. She was full of notions about city life and the future of her profession. She used to say that I was focused to person she loved, said that it helped her feel rooted. Over time, being concentrated evolved into being serious, which in turn evolved into being dull. That's how it felt. Anyhow, Lena has been moving quickly lately. Promotions, long hours, and new acquaintances in her network. I remain stable. Meals are prepared as required. Bills are paid. And the home is repaired. We converse. But it's now superficial. Time edibles, errands, and who gets to purchase food. There was nothing like the late-night discussions we had about our 5-year goals in our first apartment. Like most of my mornings, that one began. 5:15 is the alarm, ruck by the door. This discipline wasn't always a part of me. I was 15 pounds heavier and surviving on takeout and coffee 2 years ago, feeling as if each day was only a means of survival. I made the decision to start small one evening. Get up early, be heavy, and move with intention. It became stuck, because to the rain from previous night, the air was cold outside. The streetlights glinted on the sidewalks. With 55 pounds inside, I adjusted the pack straps and set my watch's timer. Running is not the same as rucking. It is heavy and slower. It seems like you made a conscious decision to take each step. I returned 40 minutes later, calves tense, breathing steady, shoulders scorching. As usual, I noted the time and distance in my notepad. Weather, date, weight, and pace. Just a line on a website confirming my presence. No audience. No abstreaks. No boastful posts. The only sound coming from the home was the hum of the refrigerator. I prepared basic things like coffee, bread, and eggs. Nothing that requires TikTok lessons or 5 ingredients. I had a customer ticket by the time the laptop powered up. A sales representative was attacked with a phishing email. IVVPN terminated the connection. Reset the login information. Looked through the records for other hits. And issued a brief report with instructions on how to prevent it in the future. 25 minutes from beginning to end. I like that aspect of my work. No drama. Problem. Solution. Done. Lena entered when I was taking notes on invoices. Air up. Heels clicking on the tile. Jacket. And blue skirt. She always seems well-groomed, as if she may run into someone significant at any moment. She watched me as she poured coffee and leaned on the counter. "Why have you been so distant from me lately?" she inquired. I continued to write. I looked up after finishing the line I was on. "I am adhering to standards," I said. Her brows furrowed. "Standards, yes." I tried not to dwell under them while I drank my coffee. For a few seconds, she simply stared at me as if she was waiting for me to explain. Without saying anything, I didn't. She picked up her keys and travel mug and left. The door closed and the house became silent. She had mentioned something similar before, but this was the first time I didn't respond with a lengthy explanation about how stressed out or exhausted I was from work. She introduced me to one of her new coworkers, the IT specialist who repairs printers. 3 months ago, at her company's downtown gala, she made me sound like the man who switches out toner cartridges in a large ballroom with music playing and waiters squeezing through with trays. I'm not a printer technician. I never did. For hospitals that cannot afford errors. I manage data security. People's medical records are made public if I make a mistake. For the work I perform for others in-house, her firm pays consultants 6 figures. Her colleague nodded courteously and continued. She laughed at someone's joke, and I watched the man leave without correcting her. She raved about how delicious the cheesecake was on the way home. I banged the plate by 10 the next morning. I worked up to 55 and maintained it there during the next months. Lena and I traveled to her sister Hannah's home on Saturday night for supper. I took out my notebook, the same one I used to track miles, and scribbled at the bottom of the page, Keep things calm. Watch patterns. No arguments. Close the book. I was now seated at the kitchen table with my laptop closed. Ethan, Hannah's husband, had just been elevated to the position of regional manager at his business. Major wage raise. Major move up. Everything. Lena went into social gear as soon as we entered. Hugs for everyone. Praise for the new curtains. And a good chuckle with Hannah over a podcast they both like. I took a step back and gave Ethan the little bottle of olive oil we had packed. His specialty was cooking. And they immediately congratulated him on his promotion. Ethan responded, "Thanks, man," and shook my hand. We sat down to supper, which included roast chicken, salad, and bread from the bakery. Lena enjoys. Long time coming. A lot of late nights. Hannah questioned Ethan about the implications of the promotion for his schedule in the middle of the lunch. He discussed the larger team, more travel, and increased responsibility. Lena slipped it in at that point. She turned to Hannah and murmured softly, "See, Ethan's always moving forward. Some individuals have an inherent drive to succeed." She could have avoided looking at me, but she chose not to. I nodded at Ethan after swallowing and chewing my sandwich. "Well done, dude. It's a significant leap." Ethan grinned. Hannah gave him a smile. Lena waited, perhaps expecting me to yes or get defensive. I didn't. I looked at my watch as dessert was served. I stood up and said, "I'm going to head out." "Already?" Lena inquired. "Yes," I replied. I had an open mat tonight. Been scheduled for the whole week. The trunk already had the workout bag, water bottle, mouthguard case, and wrist tape. Last winter, I enrolled in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu courses, in part to improve my health and in part to take a break from work. They had open mat, rolling, drilling, and no structured class on Saturday evenings. Even if I wasn't very good, I showed up. I shook his hand and said, "Congratulations again, Ethan," before leaving. "You could have stayed a little longer." I didn't answer, not out of anger. Just didn't see a point in arguing by text. Lena texted along the journey. The next weekend, we held a neighborhood get-together at Derek Lewis's home, 2 blocks over, complete with lawn chairs, burgers, and children playing with water pistols. Derek is a financial professional who loves statistics and is always on his phone reading market data. His wife laid out a big folding table with beverages and snacks. I stood with Lena in a small group. Another pair from the neighborhood is Derek and his spouse. Topics of discussion ranged from business to holidays to the weather. At that point, Lena spat out another one after laughing at something. She smiled as if it were a praise, saying, "Caleb keeps things simple." Without pursuing titles or anything like, Derek's eyebrows went up a little. I gave one nod. I handle cybersecurity for mid-sized companies, data protection, threat assessments. Compliance work keeps me busy. Derek was looking at me. He responded, "That field is exploding right now. Every company I work with is in dire need of security personnel. They can't be hired quickly enough." "Yes," I said. "High demand." After reading about ransomware in the news, his wife inquired. In 2 lines, I described how the majority of assaults occur and how basic training prevents half of them before they begin. Just facts. Nothing fancy. Everyone nodded in agreement. Lena said nothing. A bit later came Ray Donnelly. Across the street from us resides a retired Army colonel in his early 60s. Ray is the kind of man who people are compelled to listen to. Steady voice. He doesn't speak only to listen to himself. He placed his own folding chair next to mine that he had brought. When I reached for some water, he saw the gym bag in my back seat and said, "Training tonight?" "Yes," I said. "After this, open the mat." He gave a nod. He said matter-of-factly, "You either train your standards or you train excuses. Not both." That's Ray. Never give a lecture, Simply say something like that and go on. I replied I was trying to maintain the standards. Well done, guy. We spent some time watching children use water balloons to pursue one another. Derek was now discussing interest rates with another person. Lena and a neighbor I didn't know well were laughing beside the food table. I just saw the trend, without feeling offended or even ashamed. Small public insults were usually delivered with a grin. Perhaps they believed them to be innocuous. Perhaps she did, too. However, I also saw the change. Derek is following up with me on my internet job. When I informed Ray about the gym, he nodded. No one saw the person coasting. They saw a man managing his affairs and honoring his commitments. Lena came over with foil and leftover cookies as the sun began to set and people began folding chairs. All set to go. As if nothing had occurred, she asked. Yes, I said. She commented about how good it was to catch up with everyone on the way home. Between 1000 and 200, I maintained my focus on the road. I felt the same way after the gala. Before going to bed at home, I jotted down one sentence in the notepad. Give up trying to win approval. Save your receipts. Be just. The alarm was then set for 5:15. The time was 10:42 p.m. On Tuesday, my phone rang. When I noticed the words Bayview Clinic on the TV, I was folding clothes in the living room. A modest medical practice with around 40 employees is one of my more recent customers. On the second ring, I responded, Monica here. Caleb, we believe we have been struck. Files are being locked. Receiving strange texts. Are you able to make a call at this moment? I picked up my laptop from the counter in the kitchen. Provide the Zoom link to me. 3 agitated employees were on video with me in my home office 2 minutes later. To unlock their patient information, they posted a screenshot of a ransom letter requesting Bitcoin. I didn't spend time discussing the potential severity of the situation. I advised first to disconnect the impacted workstation from the network. Wi-Fi alone is not enough. The Ethernet wire should be pulled from the wall. They went quickly. Second, turn off the main server's shared directories. At the moment, one employee did what I said, while the others anxiously observed. I spoke clearly and at a level. Panic is not the goal of ransomware. Stopping the illness before it spreads is the goal. I guided them through verifying the backup status once the workstation was isolated and the server was locked down. They had a clean backup from Sunday. It turned out, our lifeblood was it. Good news, I replied. From here, we can restore. There won't be any long-term harm. But you will miss a day and a half of data input, even on camera. You could see the relief on their faces. The system was steady at midnight. I instructed them to fix vulnerabilities, wipe off the compromised workstation, and set up daily backups rather than weekly ones. My incident report are complete with timestamps and suggestions for ongoing security training. Was sent. I then recorded the invoice on my billing software. Emergency Reaction 3. 2 at Bayview Clinic in 2 hours. 850美元. Just line items. Nothing fancy. Before turning in for the night, I mailed it. When I got downstairs in the morning, Lena had already left. She had departed early for a strategy offsite with her department. According to her text, after making coffee and checking my email, I saw that the clinic had already paid the bill. Quick-thinking folks are easy to appreciate. I took a break from work at midday to stretch my legs and browse social media. I came into Lena's post at that moment, which included a group shot taken at an outside cafe with the description, Team Strategy Day with a row of coffee cup emojis. A bronze directory plate on the far wall across the street caught the sunshine behind the group. It was close to noon. Not mid-morning, as she had informed me, and the shadows on the table were brief. Nearly precisely under the seats. I recognized the name when I zoomed closer. Caldwell and Myers. Law firms. The structure was familiar to me. It was located just across from the courthouse on 8th Street in the downtown area. An odd setting for a meeting about marketing strategy. I kept keyed around her. I just opened my calendar and closed the app. her calendar of labor, which she shared. I had been added to her schedule some time ago. No location. Only the stated approach off-site all day. The identical pattern appeared twice more in the 10 days that followed. Another off-site all-day hold tactic. Another tight-cropped group cafe shot. Additionally, the typical Cafe Luna lunch bill appears on our combined credit card account at around 1240 p.m. Additionally, there was a little park ride fee for the 8th Street garage timestamped just before to lunch on each of those days. Caldwell and Myers are just across from that garage. Public postings and the shared calendar she provided me with matched our joint assertions. It was not private spying. Ordinary on its own, but too tidy when combined. I settled the card balance after lunch. The line items were tidy. Luna Café 1241 p.m. and 1203 p.m. Parkwright 8th Street Garage. In my notepad, I recorded the times and quantities, just recording. Not upset. Not assuming anything. When Lena got home that night, she spoke about how fruitful the offsite had been. I posed questions that were impartial. Where did you meet? What was the main topic? I spent the rest of the week focused on work. But I didn't forget the brass plaque, the garage charges, or the timestamps that nested together a little too perfectly. She said, referring to the co-working space near downtown and discussing campaign ideas, people often have lunch near companies. One, an accounting company preparing for tax season, signed 2 new small business customers, including a dentistry clinic that Bayou recommended after the ransomware crisis, and made sure that all contracts had start dates, retainer fees, and hourly rates explicitly stated. Before rucking on Saturday morning, I went back through the week's notes, incident response logs, new client contracts, Lena's off-site photo with the law office plaque in the background, and I updated my accounting sheet with the information, updated the projected income for the quarter, and scheduled time for initial assessments. Numbers don't lie. Work delivered. Hours built. Invoice paid. After writing a single line at the bottom of the page, confirm. Don't yell. Get professional advice. I shut the notebook, strapped on the ruck, and stepped out into the cool air. On Monday morning, I called the number for the law office Ray had suggested, Donovan and Keene, and the receptionist gave me an appointment for Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. On Wednesday, I entered a small corner office on the 3rd floor of a brick building downtown. When the lawyer, Marisa Keene, shook my hand firmly and ushered me to a small table with a legal pad and 2 glasses of water already set out. She said, "Tell me what's going on." I kept it brief. I've been married for 7 years. Have no children. Have a mortgage in my name alone. And both of us work full-time. She nodded and asked about property, debts, and retirement accounts. I gave her the numbers, and she wrote everything down in neat block letters. "Here's what you need to know," she said at the end. I had told her about the law office photo, the credit card charge, and the feeling that a conversation about ending things was coming, whether or not I started it. According to the facts, this state usually considers the residence to be yours. The division might take into account any contributions or marital equity. You are the only owner of your retirement savings. Savings are divided jointly. Everything else is considered marital property, including bank accounts, automobiles, and furnishings, if both parties cooperate. A typical no-fault divorce in this area takes 90 days from beginning to end. Regarding alimony, I inquired. "It's unlikely," she added. "There are no children involved, and your salaries are sufficiently close. Going ahead? You each retain what you earn." She passed 1 bullet-pointed document across the table. Basics of property partition, timetable, projected expenses, and what paperwork to begin collecting. Keep things tidy. Don't talk. It remains easy, she remarked. With the document folded neatly into my notebook, I thanked her, paid the consultation charge, and left. I established a new checking account at a credit union close to my workplace that afternoon. My job's direct deposit was transferred there. Until the end of the month, I did not make any changes to the joint account for split bills. Just food and utilities. The money was easy after that. The new credit union checking was damaged by salary. Retainers for consulting ended up in the company account. Only the joint bills are automatically paid by the joint account till the end of the month. My credit was then frozen online. I was able to remove the frozen for a check and replace it the same day since it came with a PIN. No fee. 5 minutes per bureau. I have stored the confirmation numbers to my notes. There were other risks in life than identity theft. Occasionally, you also shield yourself from clumsy credit card applications. Additionally, I transferred my consulting fees to a company account that I had created months before but had hardly ever utilized. Invoice templates and information are updated so that retainers are automatically directed there. Side income would remain distinct and neat going forward. After work on Thursday, I took a car to see a one-bedroom apartment 10 minutes from the city center. If you leaned out far enough, you could get a respectable glimpse of the river from the second floor's little balcony. I was given a hard copy of the lease by the landlord. The first and final month of the year is paid in advance. After the first, you may move in at any moment. If you sign now, I can hold it for 30 days. He continued. I went back through the area. There is enough space in the living area for a workstation and sofa. The kitchen is tidy yet old. 2 windows in the bedroom face east, letting in early light. Okay, I replied. Forward the documents to me. I removed the freeze for a couple of hours before to submitting the application. I refused all 3 agencies, paid the deposit online from the credit union checking that evening, and purchased 3 plastic storage containers from Home Depot on my way home after receiving the acceptance email. I texted Lena briefly on Friday morning before work. We ought to speak with someone, perhaps a counselor. Something doesn't feel right. An hour later, she responded, this month, I have a lot of promotions going on. Later, perhaps. I took a screenshot of it and stored it in the same folder as my bank accounts and receipts. Not for legal purposes, but simply in case she claimed we never attempted. Meal preparation took place on Saturday. The refrigerator is piled high with rice, veggies, chicken breasts, and labeled containers. I purchased a fresh box of protein powder, placed it on the counter next to the blender. Worked out for 4 miles before lunch using the weighted pack. Had a shower. And then went to the gym at 2:00 p.m. The gym's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class. For 90 minutes. The coach had us practice guard passes and escapes. A blue belt half my size tapped me 3 times. Head clear. Shoulders aching. And soaked. They walked out. Rai was polishing an old pair of hiking boots that evening as he sat on his porch. When I approached him, he said, "You look like a man with a full calendar." I answered that I was only trying to keep things straight. He gave the notepad I was holding a nod. "Choose your line and hold it quietly," he said. "People appreciate the quiet ones who follow through." I informed him that I had arranged lodging, established the account, and met with the lawyer. He just nodded once, like a guy crossing things off a mental checklist, without giving any advice or saying to remain or go. "Okay, then, stick to your regimen," he replied. "Don't let emotion break it." I used my home printer to print 1 page on Sunday afternoon. Caleb is still in charge of the Mercer family plan behind the mortgage until it is sold or refinanced. After current commitments are closed, joint savings are divided 50/50. No competition for cars or private accounts. Within 30 days of signing, one of us moves. At signing, it is determined who moves. The counseling offer was extended once. No additional offers if denied. A single page. Clear terms. Nothing trivial. I put it back on my desk after folding it and sliding it inside the notebook containing the lawyer's handout. The first indication arrived on a Wednesday morning. Anticipating the usual, I entered the kitchen. Lena is getting coffee and maybe browsing through her phone before leaving. Rather, she was flipping pancakes, real ones, at the stove while wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, a spatula in hand, a mixing dish on the counter, and the aroma of butter. "Morning," she replied, with a cheerfulness that was a far cry from the dismal sky outside. I cautiously put my luggage down and said, "Thought we could have breakfast together." I answered, "Sure," and took a mug out of the cupboard. Steam rising. Pancakes piled high. She pushed 2 plates onto the table. I poured coffee, sat, and kept things simple. She inquired after a few nibbles. "How's work? You've been so busy lately." "Right. Picked up some new clients," I said. She nodded as if pleased, saying, "Small businesses keep things steady." I continued eating without responding. "That's great. You've always been good at that kind of thing." In fact, the pancakes were delicious. She proposed that we go on a weekend getaway before heading out to work. That rustic retreat on the lake? Perhaps. Only us. Avoid any distractions. "I've got plans Saturday," I said. "Work after working out in the morning. Perhaps at a later day." She seemed unconcerned by it as she grinned. "All well. Then, another time." Over the following 2 weeks, the adjustments continued arriving. When I had my hair trimmed, she complimented me on it and inquired about my lunch preparations, as if she had suddenly become interested in the distinction between baked salmon and grilled chicken. Even shared a sofa with me one evening. While I was making changes to billing spreadsheets, she was largely looking through her phone and wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. But she was near enough to see. She showed up at my office door on Friday night when I was working on a security policy for a customer. She leaned on the frame and whispered, "You work so hard." I typed the last sentence. "Pays the bills," she said. "I mean it. That's not something I say enough." I asked her if she needed anything. Saved the document and closed the laptop. "Would you want to check out that new Italian restaurant tomorrow?" "My reward," I said. I already had plans. "Thank you." However, she exited the room without saying anything further after hesitating as if to protest. We were in the grocery store on Sunday afternoon, getting the usual coffee, rice, chicken, and eggs. We met Lena's coworker, Maya Patel, in the vegetable area. Lena introduced me to her as the IT specialist who repairs printers at the corporate gala a few months before. "This is Caleb, my husband," Lena continued, grinning as if we were in a commercial. "The cybersecurity specialist I mentioned to you." I nodded and said, "Hey, how's work treating you?" Maya lifted her eyebrows a little before smiled sweetly. "Nice to see you again." She talked about a campaign project while I grabbed a bag of apples. I paid for everything at the self-checkout while Lena chatted with her near the door. As we walked out, Lena said, "Maya's team could require security support soon. I told her you do consulting." So I said, "Okay, I'll leave it at that." Later that night, she made it a point to inquire about my day once more. Not just in passing, but in detail. She wanted to know what kind of projects I was working on, how many clients I had, and even how my gym training was going. "It seems like we haven't connected in a while," she said. "Over dinner. Busy month," I replied. "I want to fix that," she said. Before I left for the gym the following morning, she packed my lunch, a turkey sandwich, apple slices, and a protein bar, and labeled the bag with my name as if I were going to summer camp. I didn't respond. I just finished eating, cleaned my plate, and loaded the dishwasher. "Thank you," I said, taking it with me. And she smiled as if she was expecting more. "The cabin is open next month," she continued, "so we should book it before it fills up." I answered, neutrally, "I'll check my schedule." She tried the vacation idea again that weekend, and by Sunday night of the second week, I had tallied at least half a dozen tiny gestures. Breakfasts, packed lunches, compliments about my work, questions about my day, and even the public rebranding in front of Maya, who was working hard at something, were all handled evenly by me. I avoided snapping, getting excited, or having lengthy conversations about emotions. Before going to bed, I opened the notebook where I kept track of my miles, payments, client calls, and everything else. I wrote performances versus consistency on a new page. After that, I switched off the light and set the alarm for 5:15. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday evening, while the dishwasher was running quietly in the background, I had 3 printed papers heaped on the counter next to my notepad. In the first was a screenshot of Lena's strategy offsite photo with the name of the law office visible in the background. In the second was a 1-page timeline that I had created using her shared calendar, public posts, and our joint statements, no private messages, no hacking. And in the third was the page that lawyer Marissa Keene had assisted me in drafting. It outlined property conditions, deadlines, and next actions in clear bullet points. No emotions, no fights. Lena returned home a little after 7. She dropped her purse down, took off her shoes, and poured a glass of water before seeing the papers on the counter. "What's all this stuff we need to talk about?" I said in response to her question. After looking at the documents, she turned to face me and said, "All right. What's going on?" "We had lunch close by." "Right." I turned the second page over. "This is the timetable. Lunch close by. This is you at the offsite. That's Caldwell and Myers behind you. That's a law office, not a co-working space." Her eyes glanced across the page. She shifted her weight and crossed her arms. "Were you following me?" "No." I said, "All above board public postings and shared records. I didn't check your emails or touch your phone. The charge on the card mounts up. The calendar holds in that area of town on the same days you told me you were someplace else." She didn't respond, so I pressed the third page without sliding it over yet. "The problem is that I don't want to live a life where I'm sold down to my neighbors, friends, and coworkers." I compared what you wrote with what was on our joint statement and what you stated. "This is the plan. Papers go in Monday. One of us moves within 30 days. Your choice. No public mess. We split what's fair. Keep it clean. Keep it quiet." Her mouth opened and closed again, as if she was debating which question to ask first. And then, finally, "You're just ending it." "Yes," I said. "I don't want side talk about ambition and potential while you're planning exit strategies behind my back." She stared at the papers as if they might rearrange themselves if she waited long enough. "How did you even?" she began. I cut in calm. I said, "Like I said, public information. Your own posts. Your own receipts. Nothing private." She slowly shook her head. "This doesn't have to happen. We can go to counseling. You prefer simple endings." She pressed her lips together and said, "I didn't think things were this bad." "They are," I replied. "And I'm not looking for a rescue plan now that the exit plan got interrupted." She uncrossed her arms and leaned on the counter when I said, "You said you were too busy with campaigns. I had offered counseling 2 weeks prior. What if I apologized for how I handled things? In such case, I would respond, 'I agree.'" I added, "You did manage things incorrectly. Maybe you do." I said, "But I'm not building a future on maybe." She glanced down at the timeline sheet once more, where the dates and places were arranged in tidy rows. "I mean it," she said hastily. "I can explain those." Her voice sharpened. "You can't just decide this on your own." "I can," I said evenly. "I'm not running a cross-examination here. I'm handing you the terms. The mortgage stays mine. Joint savings split. Everything else separate. 30 days to figure out your next place. That's the deal." She gripped the edge of the counter and said, "You don't want to hear my side." The dishwasher clicked over to its drying cycle. and steam hissed softly into the kitchen. "You don't want to hear my side?" she finally asked. "I've heard your side for months in front of family, neighbors, and co-workers. All the little digs about ambition and drive. That's it after everything," I said. "Clean break." "You already talked to a lawyer?" she asked, looking at the plan page as if it might burn her fingers if she touched it. "Wednesday morning," I said. "Consultation only. No filings yet. Monday is when it starts, if you agree to keep it simple. And if I don't, then it gets expensive," I said. Before leaving the house, I emailed her a PDF version of the plan. She stared at me for a long time, as if she was looking for a crack in the wall. Finally, she said, "Caleb, please, we can fix this." I shook my head. "We had time to fix it. You spent it somewhere else." I put on my running shoes and took a long walk around the neighborhood after reading the following subject line: Next steps. Mercer. Household body text was 3 sentences. As discussed. Attached are the terms for separation. One of us moves within 30 days. Split accounts are listed. Mortgage stays mine. Filing begins Monday if no alternative agreement is signed. There were no threats or arguments. Just written clarity. The river apartment opened up early, so I decided to be the one to move. Well, within the 30-day window, there was no music. Just the sound of my footsteps on the pavement and the evening wind blowing through the trees. 3 weeks after the kitchen conversation, move-out day arrived. And I kept things simple by giving her the house for the entire 30 days. I rented a vehicle from Ray and placed my desk chair, 2 bags, and 3 storage bins into the back. I had previously packed my consulting laptop, exercise equipment, and papers, leaving the sofa, bed, and dining table, which she could either retain or sell. I took one last look around the house before I left, checking the bathroom cabinet, the closet shelves, and the kitchen drawer where I kept extra keys and tape measures. It was empty. The office was the only room that felt like mine. With the monitors unplugged, the cables neatly coiled in a box, the desk by the window, the blinds closed, the surface cleaned, and the folder containing utility account information she might need on the counter. I left the house keys in the garage opener on the kitchen counter, locked the front door from the inside, walked into the garage, and pulled it shut. Then used the outside keypad to close the garage door before I drove across town to the apartment by the river. She wasn't there, and we decided on different schedules to avoid any scenes. I carried everything upstairs in 2 trips. And by the evening, the desk was against the wall. The laptop was charging. The self-install kit was finished, and the router was blinking next to the outlet. The place had a small living area, a kitchen with exactly 4 cabinets, a bedroom, and a bathroom that smelled faintly of paint from the recent touch-ups. With the bed frame put together, the sheets on, the clothes in the closet, the pull-up bar above the bedroom door, the training bag leaning against the corner, and the wraps and gloves inside. I ate dinner at the counter while my phone buzzed with 2 new client emails requesting contracts for the upcoming month, which I responded to before going to bed. I poured coffee in a simple black mug, ate 2 eggs on toast, and watched the river through the tiny balcony door on my first morning at the new location. It was 5:15 a.m., and, as usual, I walked on, boots buckled, 4 miles down the route beside the water before most of the city was up. We went over onboarding procedures, security policy templates, employee training dates, firewall updates, 40 minutes, clear action items, and scheduled the next call for Friday. We returned home, showered, put on a black polo, and had our laptop open by 7 a.m. for a kickoff call with the accounting firm that had signed last week. There was no small talk. We just worked done correctly. "Caleb's the security guy I told you about," Rai said as I entered the small tech room where Ray who volunteers twice a month at the community center, had set up 6 donated laptops for kids interested in computers. The kids were middle schoolers. And Jordan was attempting to install Python on one of the laptops with half the steps incorrect. Jordan smiled like he had just launched a rocket when I showed him how to open the terminal, type the correct commands, and run a simple Hello World script. I then said, "Now make it say your name." He typed slowly, hit enter, saw it work, and smiled even more as Ray watched from the doorway, arms crossed, and nodding once. The session ended with the kids packing up while I wrote a brief checklist for next week on the whiteboard. Jordan gave me a high five as we left. The evening meant training. Tuesday open mat. As usual, we spent an hour going over passwords, updates, and why you don't click random links. When I rolled with a blue belt, he caught me in a triangle choke 2 minutes in. I tapped, reset, and tried again. He then told me to keep my elbows in, pointing out the space I was leaving exposed. I drilled the escape 5 times before we rolled again. And while I was caught once, it lasted longer. Back at the apartment, I opened my budget sheet and pay for my main job on one tab, consulting retainers on another, expenses listed by date, rent, utilities, insurance, and groceries. I thought about how progress in the gym felt exactly like progress everywhere else, with minor adjustments, steady reps, and nothing spectacular. The numbers balanced cleanly, with no surprises. As I drove home with sore shoulders, Lena texted me twice that week, saying, "We should talk just to clear the air." I didn't respond, not out of anger, but simply because there was no need to. The plan was signed, accounts were divided, timelines were followed, and there was nothing left to argue about. According to mutual friends, she rented a townhouse across town, apparently closer to her office, which I found acceptable. Jordan had figured out how to change the font colors in the Python script and was showing 2 other kids as if he had invented it himself. "Nice," I said, checking his syntax. "Clean work." Ray handed me a coffee. "Kids like you," he said. "They like the computers." I said, "Same thing at that age." He replied. On Saturday morning, I rucked 5 miles along the river trail before stopping at the community center once more. I put up a little whiteboard over my desk in the apartment on Sunday night, and I wrote 3 columns: clients, training, other under clients, deadlines for the dental office, the accounting firm, the new real estate group that will start next month. Under training, the schedule for BJJ classes, ruck mileage goals, and weight targets for the pack. It was the same weight in the pack, the same path under my boots, but it felt lighter now. Other community center sessions, budget review dates, call with my brother next weekend. Simple system, nothing fancy, but clear. On Monday afternoon, I received a text from Rye. Standards held. I sent it back as usual. The following morning looked like every other early alarm. Ruck on. The door locked behind me before sunrise. The river was quiet except for a few geese cutting across the water. If you're obsessed with this tale, hit the hype button. YouTube has introduced a new tool that informs YouTube that this video deserves to become viral and keeps you updated with even more bizarre stories.